Greetings, folks, and welcome to a very special live stream launch party thingamabob. I apologise if I'm looking a bit dishevelled. I've had technical issues, so I've just had to move things from one room to another at like warp speed, so I'm completely unprepared. But we're online, so that's good. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Tim Mendees. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe and all that gubbins. Right, yeah. So tonight we're looking at the launch of the Candlemas issue of Lovecraftiana Magazine. And it happens to coincide with 100 years of Weird Tales magazine. So we're going to be having a look at that as well. I have three guests, the first of which I'm going to bring in just a moment because he is the mastermind, the evil genius behind Lovecraftiana Magazine, all the way from sunny Merseyside. There's somebody he's going to be familiar to people who've tuned into these things before, Mr. Gavin Chappell. Hello, mate. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm all right.
Excellent.
Surviving up here in Merseyside.
And what's it like up there at the minute?
It's cold, gloomy,
standard.
All the usual things.
Yeah, cold and windy, standard, isn't it? It's just... So, how long has Lovecraftiana Magazine been going for now? Then,
since 2016. Volpurgis Act 2016 was when the first one came out. And it's just carried on and on and on, and I can't stop it. I keep on trying to stop it, but it won't. It keeps on coming back from the dead. But so the current edition is celebrating 100 years of weird fiction.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah, I was hoping you'd have a. That's brilliant. I've got a picture of the cover here, so that might be. There you go.
That's the one. Yeah, nice cover
nice
by
one.
Tolkien with the Necronomicon.
Oh, it's awesome. That's one thing I love about the old Lovecraftiana magazines is the covers you have done, because you get some stunning pieces of art. I mean,
I've got some pretty good artists and the interior art as well. We've got stuff by Jim Pitts. We've got stuff by John Chadwick. We got Dean Worth as well, who also contributes a story. So the art is pretty good, and so are the stories.
Indeed. Yeah, I didn't realise a friend of mine, Holly Cornetto's in that issue, isn't she? Yeah, unfortunately she couldn't make it today, which is a shame because she's done plenty of these before. So yeah, because I've got a massive stack of these. I've been collecting the omnibus ones, and I think that's the most recent one I got, and it's a chunky old tome.
God, yeah. They get bigger and bigger. To start off with, there were about 13. Well, there were 13 stories in them, and they're quite short stories, and they just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Excellent. Like some kind of Shoggoth.
Yeah, the Shoggoth that ate everything. Oh, that's that Arkham Horror campaign, isn't it? The blob that ate everything. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Excellent.
The the world.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. That's a story right there for you, isn't it? So, what made you start it in the first place? Was it like a Weird Tales withdrawal or something like that?
Well, when it started off when I was editing Schlock, which is fantasy, science fiction, horror. It's a rather broader kind of weird tales type of thing. And also I was editing for Rogue Planet Press at the time. But there was a lot of Lovecraftian fiction. It was very trendy at that point. I kept on getting Lovecraftian fiction sent to me by people who admitted that they never read anything by Lovecraft. I got quite put out by this. And I thought, well, one thing led to another. I thought, I'm going to start my own zine, another one, obviously, but this time a print zine, and dedicate it to H.P. Lovecraft, Lovecraftian fiction, and preferably a wide variety of Lovecraftian fiction. I mean, we have Cthulhu mythos, we have sword and sorcery in a Lovecraft kind of genre, we have weird fiction, cosmic horror, anything that has a kind of Lovecraftian element is good, and art as well.
Indeed, yeah. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to bring on another guest. He's been in Lovecraftiana before. He's also been on these streams plenty of times. He's my co-conspirator in the Ingsworth Book Club podcast and Strange Shadows. and he self-confessed would go to the opening of a letter. How you doing, mate?
All right, yeah, especially if there's a buffet. If there's a buffet, I'm there. So I'm looking forward to some sausage rolls and, you know, Scotch eggs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, vol-au-vents.
Tentacles on sticks.
Nice. So, Rob, when did you become aware of Lovecraftiana Magazine?
It was something I've sort of seen around. You know what it is? You go on certain online bookseller sites and you type in Lovecraft or something. And I mean, it's quite amazing now the huge amount of publications and everything you get come up, which is a great thing, really. I mean, Lovecraft related literature just seems to keep expanding. And of course, the name Lovecraftiana, the magazine, caught my eye. I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. So that was it, really. I guess maybe a couple of years back, I think I ordered the first copy. And yeah, it's nice to see, I think, like Gavin said, that range of stories as well. I think sometimes Lovecraft gets reduced to, well, tentacles or whatever. Yeah, which is fine. You know. Yeah, but it does span this quite a wide range of genres and types of or styles of writing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I discovered it around the similar sort of time, and I'd actually sent a story to Schlock magazine, and Gavin said, "Have you sent this to the wrong one?" I didn't realise they were run by the same person.
Yeah, I often get people who've been submitting to the other one, and saying, "Dear editor, hello, it's me."
Same guy. Yeah, 'cause the first one I appeared in was that one.
That's the one.
Yeah, which was
very nice token cover.
Yeah, which was Lammas Eve 2021. And I think, Rob, we're both in the same one, aren't we? The Lammas 22.
Yes, I think I had. Gavin kindly published my ghoul story set on Dartmoor, which I really enjoyed writing. I enjoyed it so much. I want to do more with those characters. I think they've got some mileage. Yeah,
I did like that one.
Yeah. Whereas I went down the Yig pet shop route.
The pet shop boys.
Well, that's one of the great things is the mythology at the back, and you can just fit pretty much anything in there. Dartmoor, pet shops.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's personally what I like doing with it is sticking it in places that you get musketeers. Exactly. Doggerland. Anywhere. It's like the weirder place you can get it, I think the better. You know, it's all about turning the everyday murderous, isn't it? It's
that's it. Yeah. What lies beneath?
Yeah, it's that M.R. James thing, isn't it? You start off with something quite mundane and normal, and slowly and gradually, or quite quickly, sometimes that facade is ripped away or slips away. You know, that's a lot of the power of Lovecraft, I think.
Indeed. Right. Let's bring on our last guest, Tonvane Wiswell, who is behind the London Lovecraft Festival, I believe.
Yes, there's clearly a lot more to Lovecraft than just what we're doing, but this is a theater-based festival, although this year we're expanding and we've added in role-playing games as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've been having a look at the program because I'm down in Brighton, so I'm going to try and get up. I'm trying to work out how many times I can get up for how many different things. It's just like, how much money do I have in the bank? How quickly can I get up to London?
You can't jump over the barriers anymore, can you? Not like
no. You get
not that we ever condone that sort of thing.
No, of course.
Well, obviously, if you can handle the horror that is the train. Getting into the festival is actually relatively easy. Yeah, we did this for 2 years before lockdown happened, and we took a break and we're back on again. But it's 7 full days, somewhere between 10 and 12 shows. I can't even remember, but there's something different happening every single day of the festival. So there's really a lot to see, starting with very classic, straightforward storytelling from Jason Buck and Mr. James Pro Nunky to
You got
Yeah, Mr. Parry's doing. Myself and Rob went up to Cambridge and saw him do that same show last year, the Gallery of Screams thing. So yeah,
see, but I couldn't. So I had a festival, so I could see the people I wanted to see do shows I kept missing out on. So the show, the big show, the first 2 nights is Reanimator, the Bloody Musical, which I actually heard about because it was happening in Glasgow, and I wrote the guy who was doing it, and I was like, "Oi, mate, I want to see your show. Want to come to my festival?" So he's gonna be here for 2 nights with his slightly reworked show, but also this guy Jason Buck. I kept seeing him during lockdown. I was doing a lot of listening to people telling stories online because it was relatively not a germ spreading event, but just really caught my imagination. So he's coming down to do 1 night of Cthulhu Cold Case, where you are trying to solve the mystery of what happened on that boat. But we also have people who are just flat out, as I see it, doing stories that are within the mythos, even though it's not directly. But so we have one called Shroud of Karen, where they have an Egyptian artifact. You know, people seem to be dying. There may be something more to this, something spooky. I'm totally into it. I love it. So if you're actually really deep in your Lovecraft, I want to make sure that you get more than just straight retellings, because that's almost too easy. So this is like, if you love Lovecraft, we're gonna, turn the volume up to 11.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. And and again, I think that's what Gavin echoes with Lovecraftiana Magazine. Because I mean, one of your things is to have all aspects of it, isn't it?
If possible. Yeah, as many different kinds of approaches as I can possibly fit in 100 or so pages.
I wish like heck we could have some of your copies like at the event, but it's just, it's all like so close together. I mean, we're opening tomorrow. And it's like the magazine's being launched tonight. Like, how could we actually get them there? But
get close.
But it's going to be, it would be great, because there's so much interest. I feel really lucky that it was poking around on Facebook. That's how I found out about your magazine, because
that's always dangerous.
Yeah, well, it is very. Yeah, I'm really into my theater. Like, that's my thing, and I'm a playwright. That's what I do. I haven't even ever tried a short story, but I really want to. And I think I may have a submission for you in the future.
Very good, very good. There's actually a story in the current edition, which what you're telling about, reminded me very much, by DJ Tyra, and it's what's it called? Rock opera. It's actually about a rock opera of The King in Yellow, set in a pub.
Oh, nice!
Reminded me so much of
Oh, that's brilliant. That reminds me of the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society's rock opera of Dreams in the Witch House. Have you heard that? It's an absolute masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. It's so bonkers. It's like the musical they did, the Shoggoth on the Roof.
I was going to say Shoggoth on the Roof was the other one. Yeah.
Did they do that black and white Call of Cthulhu movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen that. The Whisper in Darkness as well. Yeah.
I want them to come to our event, but I'm not big enough for them to make the trip over the pond yet. So.
Well, you never know. Early days. Is this the first one you've done of this?
This is the first. This is the third full-length festival. So we did one I think 2017, 2018. Like, time has gotten kind of slippery lately. It's a little hard for me to remember. And then we had the lineup and everything sorted for our third year, but had to pull the festival, and we just went ahead with the new writing competition, because everybody had already submitted. So we did an online reading of the winner of the writing competition. But this is the third full length festival, so we're pretty established, and we've got a good rhythm down, and enough people are interested in participating and coming to see it. So should work out pretty well.
Excellent. Yeah, Gavin, you mentioned DJ Tyra's in there, and I saw on the cover that Lee Clark Zumper's in there, and
he's definitely here.
the aforementioned Holly Cornetto. Who else have you got in this month's episode then?
Well,
episode?
we have got
edition.
this month's scripting episode. We've got one remarkable article. John DeLafter, is that how you pronounce his name? I'm not quite sure. It looks like it. Yeah. I got him to write, because I was impressed by stuff he'd written for your zine, Rob. So I asked him to write basically a history of weird tales. So he's talking about weird tales, during its height. We've got one horrifying poem by Scott J. Couturier, Your Flower Blooms, and then we've got various writers. We've got some who've appeared before, like Lee. We've got M.S. Swift, who's been in before. We've got Maxwell Gold, Carlton Herzog, the unimitable Holly, Dean Worth, Simon Bleaken, and M. Stern. They've all been in it before. We've also got Tyree Campbell, Mohammed Rizwan, Miranda Yearwood, Guy Reeson, Jeffrey Boggio, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that, Italian-looking name, and quite a few other writers, and some amazing stories, poetry, short stories, and of course, we have got some wonderful art. I'd just like to show you some of my favourites. That's one that John Chadwick.
Yes.
Chadders.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. And what else have we got? We've got some amazing stuff about Jim Pitts. Kind of find. He does these wonderful little filler pieces like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool. Nice. I like that. Got the Innsmouth look right there, is it?
And some full-on ones like that.
Oh,
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that one was really good because I put it in just after Holly Cornetto's story, which ends up with it's a kind of series of journal entries about an expedition and so forth. But it ends up with in brackets, a doodle winds up and down the margin of the page, a mass of writhing worm-like creatures. And then on the next page.
Brilliant.
When you commission the art, Gavin, do you have a story in mind, or do you just ask the artist to do something and then see it works out?
I just accept art and I accept stories, and if they fit together, that's great. But getting art to fit to the stories and all that would involve more time than I really have to dedicate to. Yeah, which is a shame. I would like to have the kind of art, like they had in Weird Tales, that was specifically for the stories, but it's just the logistics of it, really.
So
that brings us.
get a copy of your lovely magazine, because I don't know.
Sorry, how can you get a copy? It's on Amazon, like most things these days. Originally, we started out on Lulu, but realised that no one bothers buying things on Lulu. So
I don't even know what Lulu is. No idea what that is.
She makes me want to shout. I know that.
Oh.
Sorry.
Nice. Yeah, that's one of the things I really like about Lovecraftiana Magazine is that you've got that mixture of art and everything, because it really does echo Weird Tales. So that brings us neatly, because I don't know if any of the viewers out there noticed that the promo graphic for the background, I actually used a zoom in and filter job on the first ever cover of Weird Tales, because it is 100 years in March, isn't it? I believe. And,
it was published in March. Well, in fact, it first came out on the 18th of February. So February is actually when it started, but it said March on the cover. So that fits in quite well with Lovecraftiana coming out in February.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, because one of the things as well, it's a great cover. You've got a physical copy of it, haven't you, I believe?
I have a...
There you go. Look at that.
Wow.
Now, Yeah, I just want to bring this up on the screen because it's a great picture. I believe it was for the story Ooze, which I haven't read, but I've managed to find a PDF of it. So I'm going to be reading that later. But yeah, look at that.
Oh, wow. That's
what I want to know. It's brilliant, isn't it? But you've got the tentacles coming out around the woman, and behind it, I don't know if the tentacles are coming from the shadow, but the shadow looks like a bear. Now I've zoomed in a little bit on it. It looks like a bear is hiding. Is the bear hiding from the tentacles, or are the tentacles coming from the bear? I can't figure that out.
Is
He
the bear
likes
just watching?
sushi. I think he likes sushi.
Yeah. Nice. Now, what it reminded me of, that cover, is something I found a while ago because I was doing a story set in Victorian London. So I was looking at the illustrated police news, and I found this beauty. Alarming experience of fair bathers attacked by an octopus. That's from October 1896. Now, again, I've zoomed in on this, but I feel it's the same energy here.
You have to wonder if the artist had ever seen an octopus in real life, don't you?
I love its grit. It looks like he's got a tash. It's brilliant. It looks like he's got a Victorian villain's moustache. It's brilliant.
He actually looks like he's scandalized by seeing these women's ankles. That looks
exactly. The Victorian chap octopus. Stop showing your ankles around my spawn.
Ooze as a story has one thing interesting about it, which is it involves essentially a proto-Shoggoth. It's basically a giant amoeba. I won't give too much away because the story is pretty interesting. I mean, the early stories from Weird Tales are noted for not being quite as good as they were later on, but there are some pretty good stories in the yeah,
I noticed that there's actually a story from Farnsworth Wright himself in here, isn't there?
He did write a certain amount himself.
Now, it's like, while I'm really familiar with his life and everything, obviously going through the letters and all the rest of it, I must have read some of his stuff at some point, but I can't remember. So I'm looking forward to diving into that later.
Yeah.
Something you might want to check, because he did a lot of poetry as well, but he used the pen name or the pseudonym Francis Hard.
Ready now.
Yeah, if you have a search for Francis Hard, you might find some of this.
I think we need to put a homage to that in the next Nickynomicon, don't we?
Now, if you put that in your search engine, I'm not responsible for whatever comes up. I'll just.
Well, in the first edition of Weird Tales, the later editor Farnsworth Wright contributes a short story called "The Closing Hand," and the shout line says, "A brief story, powerfully written."
Right,
that's on
nice.
page 98.
Excellent. Yeah, another name that jumped out at me because I misread it at first was W.H. Holmes. I thought it was H.H. Holmes, the serial killer, to begin with. I was just like, hang on. He's writing about his murder castle in Chicago. Yeah. But another one that
are interesting. That's on the back. Wanted for murder. And basically it's a do-it-yourself kit to become a detective.
Wow.
Oh, I feel like I need that for writing a lot of detective stuff at the minute.
100 years ago. Course in Secret Service, free. A lot of courses were strangely free. And it also, very topical at the time, become an electrical expert.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love looking things like that. That's what, like, when I was going through the illustrated police news, like doing all that research a while ago, some of the adverts in there were absolutely hysterical. You wouldn't believe there was pills and potions for pretty much everything in Victorian London at the time.
and still in 1923. And there's one which, an advert here from Truth Publishing Company. "Gentlemen, please send me in plain wrapper Margaret Sanger's book, Woman and the New Race. I'm enclosing no money. Will give the postman who delivers the book to me $2 plus postage."
Absolutely brilliant.
And a partial list of contents includes contraceptives or abortion, women and the new morality, legislating women's morals, why not birth control clinics in America.
Blimey.
Sadly, still topical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Terrifyingly still topical. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah. I've already asked like Gavin about the influence of Weird Tales on his magazine, but how influential was it on your writing? Because you do a lot of that kind of stuff, like your Sinbad and the Great Old Ones is very that I'm sure that would have fit in there quite nicely.
Yeah, well, I mean, Weird Tales. I only heard about it until I got more into it. I didn't hear about it, but I did hear about it, but I didn't read anything other than things from anthologies that had appeared in Weird Tales. And well, I mean, I got really into Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard when I was around about the same time I started attempting to write. So Robert E. Howard is probably one of my main influences, with Lovecraft as a kind of there in the background sort of thing. But what I feel sorry about, who I feel sorry for, writers like what's his name? He was the guy who everyone forgets about. I've forgotten about him myself. The detective.
Seabury Quinn.
Seabury Quinn, yeah. Everyone forgets about him, like, including me. Yeah, and there are loads of writers like that who were really popular then, and now no one's ever heard of them. But H.P. Lovecraft carries on.
I think Quinn was the most published writer, or that had the most stories in. I think I don't know where Lovecraft was in the list, but I think Quinn was at the top.
Yeah, it's interesting because Rob and I have been going through a lot of these more obscure writers, and one we covered that we doing a recording the other day. One we covered had been in 19 times, and she was the second most published female contributor. And yeah, I don't think anybody had heard of her at all. Gladys Gordon, wasn't it? It's Travares was the name she went under, I think. Yeah. I mean, there was a tremendous amount of stuff, and it was like going through that list on the first issue. It's like I think I know quite a lot about Weird Tales, but I obviously don't. It's like I've only scratched the surface. Yeah.
I think basically, if Lovecraft liked you and August Derleth liked you, you went on to become famous. But the rest of them, well, if they did become famous, it was because of something else. Like Edmund Hamilton, you get all that bitchiness about Edmund Hamilton coming out with the same plots every time, which is very true. I've read quite a few of his science fiction stories that first appeared in Weird Tales. It's basically the same plot every time. There's a great threat to the solar system, or maybe the galaxy, or maybe the universe, or maybe another universe, and a bunch of spacemen go off and duff up some aliens, and that's it. They go home.
Nice. So, Rob, how influential was it on you?
I think similar to Gavin, it was something I'd always heard about. So I got into Robert E. Howard quite early on, and then from Howard, I think I remember reading on the back of one of the Conan paperbacks a quote from Lovecraft, or he was mentioned in the introduction. So Howard was the gateway into Lovecraft and then into all the rest of it. So I was aware of Weird Tales as a magazine that they were published in, or tried to be published in many cases. Smith's case in particular, But I don't think I ever actually read a copy or saw a copy. Probably until did it start being printed again about 20 years back or something like that? I can't remember the exact dates.
It was republished. There was an attempt to start it again in the 70s, but that didn't go very far. Then in the 80s, John Betancourt and a few other people like that started it. Then they lost the rights to the title, and then they got the title rights back, and now they sold it to someone else who doesn't seem to be really publishing many copies. That's a summary of modern Weird Tales. Right.
And I think it's a shame. I mean, because obviously those authors that we know about tremendously influential. I mean, I'd say for me, probably about 70% Howard, 30% Lovecraft in that kind of writing, certainly. But obviously, there's a very rich scene to mine there. It's a shame that a lot of these other authors haven't been anthologized. Well, I know that is changing to some extent. They are being printed more now. But I mean, I think how many issues were there, and how many stories per issue? That's got to be hundreds and hundreds of stories.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I saw somebody's actually done. I'll try and find a link and post it up somewhere. Somebody's done. I found it on Reddit. You know, I try not to go on a Reddit because it's terrifying half the time. But somebody's done a database of the first run of Weird Tales, and every issue and every story and every thing in it. So I don't know how much time that would have taken them to put that together. It's mind-boggling. But yeah, I'll put a link up to that somewhere at some point, because I think it'll be a very handy tool for looking out some weird and wonderful hidden gems. Yeah. So, Tom Vane, how much does Weird Tales and the stuff in it, obviously doing a Lovecraft festival, are you familiar with the magazine?
I came to it all backwards because I started with Lovecraft. And it wasn't until I started trying to connect with more Lovecraft fans that I kept hearing weird fiction and weird tales coming up again and again, because when you try to describe Lovecraft's writing, if you say, oh, it's science fiction, it's not. And if you say it's horror, well, not quite. And it's really weird fiction that is the right way to describe it. Not a lot of people even know what it means. And for me, like, actually, I'd love to get my hands on a one of those like grubby ancient copies of the magazine, because I would really love to actually see more of it. But I am a science fiction reader. That's like, my whole life is reading cheesy science fiction, which I completely adore. But I've done very little magazine reading. Although I used to do quite a bit more with anthologies. So the lucky thing for me is I have got a treasure trove of stuff that I can enjoy and I can like splurge into, because like what I would imagine in my little twisted mind is actually, as I think of expanding the mythos, is just maybe moving into more of a like weird fiction in general, because I really enjoy that whole era, and I have ideas for stories I want to write that I think follow that sort of format of dealing with like the scientific discoveries that we're having today, for example, and figuring out just what could go wrong. What could go wrong with having, the ice on Greenland melting? Are there possible frozen civilizations or monsters like underneath that ice? But for me, I went to the BP exhibit on the sunken city at the mouth of the Nile. And I was like, they're doing underwater archaeology? Well, there's 12 novels right there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's basically what inspired something that us three are involved in, was a project that I ran about Doggerland, the bit between... Yeah, the Atlantis of the North Sea. I actually saw it on Time Team. They'd sent people diving down there, and I was like, "Ooh, now there's an idea."
It's so cool. And there's places you can go do scuba tours of sunken cities, like off the coast of the volcanic islands of Sicily. And when you think about it, I'll just go do scuba diving where some ancient civilization has a world temple. What could go wrong?
Yeah. And something coils around your ankle and drags you down. There you go.
Check your travel insurance before you go. Eldritch horrors. The Eldritch horrors
definitely is excluded.
A Shoggoth Burns covered in travel insurance.
But I think that's a really good point, because when you read a lot of Lovecraft stuff, he was talking about cutting edge science of the time. We had Einstein. Yeah. Was it The Whispering Darkness, where the guy's carrying some sort of an early radio pack or something, or I can't remember, some sort of device
with
that now
you're
holding.
Running in and getting like the little signal, like, I'm not feeling so good anymore.
Yeah, it's like that statement of Randolph Carter, isn't it? They're running the cable down the tomb. Yeah. With the old cranking telephone thing that they had in the trenches. Yeah. So,
what if you have like a cell phone that you can still makes calls to the dead? I mean, it's so easy to take science and then just move it just a little bit further, and to not getting into all of the the cyberpunk stuff. But I think that there's it's ripe, and it actually I'm glad it's exciting for me that there's people who are still doing writing, that looks at that part of the world, because there's so much fiction just waiting to come out of it. And given the way that the last 3 years have run, we're going to have a bumper crop of stories. That's what I
got you. Yeah.
I mean, AI has only just kind of started, right?
Yeah, well,
I'm telling you, Skynet.
From the real life horror stories where the 15-year-old who bought some kind of vitamins has welcoming your new baby stuff sent to her parents' house where she lives. I'm like, we don't have a baby, I mean, if that's the kind of stuff that's already happening, there's a lot more horror stories out there waiting to be written.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think Weird Tales for me, I think I discovered it very similarly to Gavin and Rob through Lovecraft, but I think it was actually specifically through August Derleth, because I'd picked up, I can't remember what they were called. They were like little paperbacks, but they were collections of like the best. It wasn't the Arkham Sampler, but it was other ones, like science fiction stories. And I think Carl Edward Wagner did them as well.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what it was called, but it was like the year's best science fiction or something like that. It was a little paperback, but all these stories.
Like that.
Yeah, there was loads of them in my local bookshop when I was a kid. And they were only like 50p or something like that. So there was loads of them. And I was just picking them up and devouring them. And it was in the back of them, it was always first published in Weird Tales, first published in Astounding Stories, first published in Weird Tales. And I was like, I need to find this Weird Tales thing, So it became a quest for a long time as I was a kid. And I managed to find one in a shop in Manchester. And it was all tatty and ragged and all the rest of it. It was a comic book shop. And I was just like, I don't care. It's an absolute state, but I'm having it. And I've still got it in a plastic wallet in the loft up at my family home up in Macclesfield. So I need to get it next time I'm up there. I need to find it,
Which issue is it? Which issue is it?
I have no idea. I can't remember. There was nothing in it that I really recall. And there's no real names in it that I recall. It was one of those. I think it was quite late in its life, to be honest. And it was. There was nothing really to write home about in the thing. There was a couple of stories I seem to remember liking. It was a long time ago now, but yeah, and but I've got one. I have one.
Real one. Wow.
I have one.
They must command top dollar, the old sort of 20s and 30s editions, I imagine.
Yeah.
Not cheap.
Yeah. Well, it's like you look at how much old copies of the Beano go for on eBay, and things like that. I mean, and they were sort of everywhere, weren't they? Every kid of a certain age had the Beano.
Yeah, they would have been far more circulation, I imagine, for those. Yeah.
Ladybird books. There's a big market for secondhand Ladybird books.
Really?
Yeah, and the Penguin Classics as well. The old orange covers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're all. It's amazing what some of these things go for. One thing I've noticed for years, right? I've got obviously weird taste in literature. You could usually go in a second-hand bookshop and pick it up for £1, but now people have cottoned on that it's sort of sought after stuff. You'll notice the price keeps creeping up.
Yeah, eBay was like that. It used to be an old Panther, Clark Ashton Smith, £1.50, and now they're like £35 kind of thing. Yeah.
I was looking for remember the old Conan stories written by other writers. After the new Conan story came out, I thought, some of them quite good. So I looked for some on eBay. Oh God, the prices, ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they managed to sell them. That's the thing. It's being sold for this kind of price, but is it actually selling?
Is that the old L. Sprague de Camp ones? And
and
like that?
Robert Jordan wrote a lot, and various other writers in the 80s and 90s.
And Andrew Offutt ones were quite good. He did a
pretty good job of it. But they just cranked them out until the start of this century. Lots of writers.
I just noticed a comment in the side there, going back to that insurance thing. That's just made me chuckle. Kieran Judge said, not covered for acts of God, has to be expanded to include all gods and eldritch beings.
There we go. Yeah.
Nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Get any comments down in there, and if you have any questions for us, get them in there. We'll go through them before we wrap up. Yeah. So, aside from obviously Lovecraft, who would you say is quintessentially weird tales, Gavin?
Well, probably it's a difficult one, really. But I suppose Clark Ashton Smith. I mean, Clark Ashton Smith is like H.P. Lovecraft, but less accessible, which is what makes it particularly weird to my mind. I mean, I love Robert E. Howard, but Robert E. Howard was basically a writer of ripping yarns and swashbuckling tales. And let's stick a bit of eldritch horror in here. So I wouldn't say, I mean, they were very popular, but I wouldn't say they were quintessentially weird tales. And then the Seabury Quinn, I mean, his stories, I've read a few and I liked them, but they were just sort of Agatha Christie with, well, not necessarily tentacles, but yeah, some kind of supernatural element. But what I found from reading a few copies, and they're not original copies, they're reprints, I would say, is that a lot of them are not Lovecraftian. They're not cosmic horror or anything like that. I mean, there's a series of them I was reading that were basically just about, I think it was the Philippines, just everyday life amongst Filipinos, you know, sort of tribal kind of existence as it was in the 1930s. But it was written by a man who'd been, I think, maybe in the American embassy there or something like that. It was just about slightly weird everyday life in the Philippines.
Mm.
But yeah, Clark Ashton Smith probably is a kind of distillation of all that weird talesness.
Yeah, I'd say so. 'Cause, I mean, what we've noticed is myself and Rob are going through them in order for the Strange Shadows, which you've guested on a couple. Seeing the range of it, because you'll get like your interplanetary stuff, you'll get the cosmic stuff. There's been some jungle stuff. There's been some, you know, this and that and the other and all that. And so, yeah, there's a bit of everything in Smith's writing, I think. Yeah. The other one, who I would say as well is a contender, would be Donald Wandereye.
Oh, yeah.
Because his stuff was incredibly varied as well. He likes his proto-shoggoths. He likes his big amoeboid creatures that slurp up small towns in America. But again, but also you've got like, you know, interstellar travel and strange worlds. And obviously you've also got the sort of Orient stuff and jungle-y stuff. And so bits of everything. Yeah, Rob, what would you think?
I would go along with Smith, definitely, for reasons you already mentioned.
Yeah.
But then I think of people like Belknap Long. And again, you have that kind of range. There's that sort of druggy, psychedelic element that was almost like a precursor to the 60s with the Hounds of Tindalos and plutonian drugs and all that kind of thing, which I think there's a very good book by Gary Lachman about the 60s, about the dark side of the 60s. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but a big part of that, he talks about the rise of the pulps or the return of the pulps in the 60s and the 70s, well, you know, with Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard and that whole psychedelic aspect to their work as well, which I suppose in their day was a reflection of the romantic poets, right? Or your Baudelaire's and your Byrons and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think now everything has to be so specific in a genre. I don't know that a magazine like Weird Tales could particularly exist in a mainstream way that it did then, because everything now would be so divided. And no, that story can't be in this because you've got a spaceship in it, so therefore it's science fiction. Yeah, but look, there's this monster in the spaceship, so it's horror. So, but it's also cosmic, so it's Lovecraftian, you know. I think back then it was just weird, and that covers all manner of sort of stories, really.
I tried to be really open church for running my festival, because I don't think that limiting people to just retelling Lovecraft stories, or it has to be, Cthulhu, or just being really close to that. I think that expanding and growing people's minds, and like growing the literature, is really where it's at, because like that's going to bring more joy to people than just rehashing the old stuff. Like it's like we've got some Aleister Crowley stories that someone's going to tell, and I'm just like,
nice.
I'm like, yeah, come on, let's have it. Let's see what you got here. And I absolutely want people that are telling completely fresh stories. You play a CD, and the music off the CD like makes people have a connection with cosmic intelligences. Like, yes, please make this story happen. Like, if I want to hear it, I know there's other people out there that want to hear it too. But there's a lot of there's stories waiting to be told still. And I think if we try to be like super narrow and like limit what's happening, that it's actually less fun for people who want to be, who want to read, who want to see stuff, who want to get into the whole like experience of like, maybe our world is a little creepier than we realized. I mean, personally, I'm feeling like the world is very creepy right now.
I'm still convinced, it's something I mentioned on the podcast quite often, that when they switched that Hadron Collider on a few years back, there was some kind of shift, because reality is definitely shifting.
It's warped, hasn't it, somehow? Well, I'm still convinced that Nyarlathotep is amongst us. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
I was gonna say, Rob, I think you're right. Like, the universe actually split in two at that point, and there's some more pleasant path where that never got turned on, and we've missed out. And unfortunately, we got the dystopia instead of the utopia.
There's the title of the story, The Great Divergence. There you go.
Oh, nice. Right, so let's move on to a few comments. There's a question down there that I'm gonna use and put to you in just a moment. But we've got some pretty good comments here. This is back to Lovecraftian from Sean Danger Monaghan. I am forever excited to see more wonderful zines out here in the world. Absolutely. It's something like, as well as Lovecraftiana, you've got his Schlock magazine, but you've also got things like Cosmic Horror Monthly as well, haven't you? Mm-hmm. And I think there's another one. There's one that Lyndon Perry does, which is Res Aliens or something.
That's one, yeah.
Yeah, Res Aliens. And so zines seem to be making a bit of a comeback, which is great. It's absolutely great. David B. Harrington says the stories are always top notch in Lovecraftiana. I couldn't agree more.
You should know he's a proofreader. It's a very good job.
Yeah, so he knows. Yeah, he's been through all of them. Yeah, excellent. Joseph Helsing says horror theatre equals the best theatre. Absolutely. So that starts tomorrow, doesn't it? Your festival in London, the Theatre Festival. And where is that again?
So it's at the Drayton Arms Theatre, which is a short walk from either Gloucester Road or Earl's Court Station. It's just really digestible, because I've discovered over lockdown that not everybody's a good reader, and some people really prefer to consume their information and their media in audio style, which makes podcasts and stuff so perfect. But also it means that theater is a way that they can enjoy something, because they're just not readers. So this should make taking your Lovecraft in very, very easy. Although I do always worry about people being overly detailed when they depict cosmic horror, because sometimes it's a little funny. Sometimes it's not as scary as you want to. I was accused of inserting a line from from the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. I'm doing this completely ridiculous puppet show, a shadow puppet show, the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. I couldn't figure out how to make cats fly. There's a lot of hard things to do.
Is that what that comment's about? Because I could, without any context, I was like, and puppets.
Yeah. So like my personal taste is to not show in overly great detail, because there's something about 6 foot tall penguins that just kind of makes you want to giggle. Okay, so there you go. You know, I mean, how horrified are you about penguins? You're not.
There's something about a 6 foot tall penguin that makes me facepalm. Years ago, when eBay first started, I got incredibly drunk one night, and I came back, and I'd obviously bid on something, and then woke up the next day, and I couldn't remember for the life of me. But some money went out of my account a few days later, and I'm like, I'm still clueless. And then a couple of weeks later, a postman turned up with a box of KMFDM CDs and a life-size stuffed emperor penguin.
Every house should have one.
That is amazing.
I was therefore banned by my partner at the time from going on eBay ever again.
Junk eBay shopping is not good. Like I found out that I had decided to reward myself by buying everything that was on my Amazon wish list off of eBay at like 3 a.m. And then I forgot I did it. And so like Christmas came, I had all these presents, and then I was like, oh dear, but I bought these for myself already. Because, but yeah, we've got like a week of shows, including like a podcast. We've got like some very, very trad, it's called Tales from Arkham, which is like 3 Lovecraft stories wrapped into one. We have the I know you got to hear the Nunky reading, but I'm looking forward to hearing how he does Eric Zahn.
Oh, it's very good.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And for the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, we have a group called Shivers, who was again someone I heard of doing Lovecraft stuff, and I said, "Would you come to my festival, please, sir?" And he plays theremin and has these really great readers read the stories, and there's just like all this space where you can your imagination can fly. So I've got him and a good reader, and I'm doing puppet shows with flying cats, Pikmin, and a very, very confused Carter. I've decided to make it a Miranda Carter instead of having it be Randolph Carter, because she just looked so good in a top hat. I couldn't say no.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. So it's going to be, it should be as it were, a complete scream. Oh, plus the late night, 9 p.m. next Sunday, we're having the Night of 1,000 Tentacles.
That's something I want to go to.
Cabaret. You fucking got to come. The last time we had it, it was so popular. I was I gave up my seat and I went to the booth, and people were on the stairs. So
nice.
Yeah, it was good. It was really good. So next year when we come back, I'm hoping we can. When we're having the gaming event on Saturday from noon to 6 downstairs at the Drayton Arm, which is like free to anybody to drop in, come meet other Lovecraft gaming nerds. Like myself, and I think that there's some people that are commenting here that are also game nerds.
I imagine so. There's a lot of crossovers.
But next year we're going to bring back the new writing strand, and when I'm looking at, I'm like, maybe we can send some scripts off to you guys, or you can. I think there's lots of writers out there, and I think that this genre people can come at it without feeling like they're being gate-kept too much.
It's not like Tolkien fandom.
Oh,
no,
it's the total opposite.
Lord of the Bins.
Yes, one ring to collect them all. Yes,
that's just so ridiculous, isn't it? They're suing a bin company for. That's just absolutely ridiculous. Speaking of wanting to get involved in Lovecraftiana Magazine, fantastic writer and very good artist, Mr. Josiah Witkowski, says, "Ooh, another piece I would enjoy drawing for." So there you go. He's the man you need to speak to, Mr. Chappell up there. We have regular viewer Dawn Keat says, "Evening all, hope you're well. Gavin, you're from her neck of the woods." There you go. There's got another neighbour. And she bought the Nookie-Nomicon the other day. Excellent. Rob's in that. So, yeah. That's the more ridiculous end of the Lovecraft spectrum. It's Lovecraftian stories in the style of Carry-On films. But, it had to be done. It had to be done.
Carry on,
right, we've got...
Be rude not to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were going to call it Carry On Cthulhu, but there's obviously the Carry On name. We couldn't get hold of the people with the rights, so we just called it the Nookie-Nomicon instead. Kieran Judge says, "Are you going to put random fake ads in Lovecraftiana in future then?"
It's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
I
only have one actual ad for Innsmouth, of course.
Nice.
Perhaps we could get some. We could do like a Pearl and Scream crossover.
Yes, Pearl and Scream. Yeah,
yeah.
Like Innsmouth hairdressers curl up and die, that kind of thing.
There we go. There you go. Yes, that looks to be the link that I mentioned. Yes, well done, Sean. Well spotted. That's the one. That's it. The database of all the weird tales. So that's good. Right, we'll just got one more time for about one more question now, just before we wrap this up, and I've completely lost it because I'm an idiot. Here we go. Yes, it's a question from Chris Wiswell. Any relation?
Yep.
Yep.
He's tuned in from America.
Splendid. Yeah. So who are the weirdest tales writers today, in your opinion? So Gavin would be a good one to ask here with Lovecraftiana Magazine. Who would you say would be the best fit for Weird Tales Magazine out of the people you know?
Now, that's got me thinking. Out of the writers I've had submissions from over the years. Well, I mean, I think Lee here, he's one, definitely. And Simon Bleaken. I can imagine him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who else? I just noticed a typo.
Always the way, isn't it?
Who else? Definitely Lee and who else was I saying? Oh yeah, Scott as well. Scott J. Couturier. I could imagine him. And yeah, Simon Bleaken. I can imagine those three appearing in Weird Tales, definitely. Yeah.
Excellent. Rob, over to you, sir.
Wow, it is quite a difficult one. I mean, I think of all the people who've been in the anthologies, John Houlihan, Lee, you've already mentioned, Miguel Fliger. There's a huge pool of Lovecraftian writers today. I think if the question was who is the weirdest modern writer, in that sense, I'd probably say Thomas Ligotti. I'm absolute awe of as a writer, who manages to hit the cosmic every time and the bleak and very grim without ever really mentioning Cthulhu or any of the mythos. I think it's a really good example of that sort of non-mythos Lovecraftian story.
Yeah, I think Laird Barron is another one that does that, and Caitlin Kiernan as well. I would say.
Yes.
I think Caitlin R. Kiernan would go well.
Yes,
and from over here, somebody I think could be a really good fit would be David Hambling.
Oh yes, of course.
I think his Harry Stubbs stories would go down really well in the sort of, with the occult detection and all that kind of stuff. I think that'd fit really well. Do you have anybody you know that you think would happen, Tom Bain?
I don't think it's fair to say that to Charles Strauss, but I love the way that he gets, modern advances and
the Laundry Files is so good.
Pulled into his stories. but
Yeah.
it just has made me believe that there is something weird lurking down nearly every alley in central London.
I love Charles Stross's stuff because he's taken the Cthulhu mythos and done something completely left field with it. Basically, British bureaucracy versus the Cthulhu mythos. It's so funny, but also there's some bits in it that just sort of make you go, ugh. It's just incredibly well done.
It's like having organized religion and sort of the need for the queen to breed, to to find beings to infect, and it's all just kind of fitting into having Roe v. Wade be overturned, and it's like really quite creepy. So I think the way that the thing that he pulls in as well is the modern politics and how that sort of helps create a bit more of a horrific environment for all of us to live in.
Yeah, like the Fuller Memorandum, I think it was the third in the Laundry Files, which was all about politicians, wasn't it? One of them was actually Nyarlathotep, which I've always said, if Nyarlathotep is going to come amongst us, he's going to either be a politician or he's going to work at the local post office just to spread maximum misery and chaos.
Yeah, I could definitely see him as a postie.
Yeah. On that cheery note, right. Well, thank you all for joining us today, and thank you all at home for watching. And so Lovecraftiana, the Candlemas edition, is out now, and like Gavin said earlier, you can get hold of that. Just go on Amazon and things like that, and just type in Lovecraftiana, and a whole bunch of them will come up, and you'll end up like me with a stack like that of them, because they're compelling reading, wouldn't you? Because I started collecting the omnibuses, so yeah, it was kind of like, well, I've got one of them, I'm going to have to get the others. There you go. Yeah, it's a fantastic book, and like I say, go and grab yourselves a copy. So, thanks, guys, and thanks for joining us again. Like I say, this should be up on YouTube at some point, so please like it and share it and all that old lovely stuff. And right, with that, it's bye from me, Tim Mendees.
It's bye from me, Rob Poyton.
And bye from me, Gavin Chappell.
Bye from me, Tom Dane Wiswell.
Good night.